The wind howled through the empty metal streets of the colony outpost. Most houses were dark, cold, and quiet, except for one small home at the edge, or an old human man sat by a weak fire, drinking something warm. He hadn't had visitors in months, and he liked it that way. Alone was safer, quieter, easier. His name was Marcus, a retired mechanic who had come to this cold world to escape the noise of the galaxy. No neighbors, no politics, no trouble. Only silence, and silence never betrayed him, but then just passed. Midnight came a soft knock. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. Marcus froze, his hand halfway to his mouth. He turned his head slowly toward the door. No one ever came out here, not this late. Not ever. He waited, thinking maybe it was the wind or his imagination. Then, again, tap, tap. This time softer, like someone too scared to knock louder. Marcus stood up, cautious, his boots scraping the floor. He reached the door, unlocked the first bolt, then the second. He opened it just a crack, just enough to see, and there she stood, an alien girl, soaking wet, shivering, with skin the color of pale moonlight and wide, glowing violet eyes. Her hair was tangled and dripping. Sticking to her thin cheeks, she wore a dirty, ripped cloth around her shoulders, barely enough to keep warm. But what shocked Marcus most was not how she looked. It was what she said. "I can cook." She whispered in broken English, her voice shaking. "I can clean." She looked down, ashamed. "I can be quiet." Marcus didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared, confused and a little afraid. Who was this girl? Why was she here? She looked up, her eyes begging not for food, not for money, but for safety. Something in her gaze made his chest tighten. Not fear, not even pity. Something deeper, like a memory he didn't want to remember. The rain kept falling, cold and cruel. The girl didn't move. She stood like a statue, her bare feet sinking into the mud. She wasn't crying, but her whole body trembled as if holding back a scream. Marcus looked back inside, then back at her. His mind said, "Close the door. Stay safe. Stay alone." But his hand moved anyway. The door opened wider. She blinked in surprise, then quickly stepped in without waiting for permission. He shut the door behind her, locked the bolts, and turned slowly to face her. Water dripped onto the floor, forming a small puddle around her feet. He handed her a towel without saying a word. She took it with both hands, holding it like it was made of gold. Marcus sat back down by the fire, watching her. She dried her face, her arms, then sat on the floor near the heat, not even asking for a seat. Her eyes followed every movement he made, scared she'd do something wrong. "What's your name?" he asked after a long silence. She shook her head quickly. "No name," she whispered. "Not allowed." Marcus frowned. "Not allowed." He looked at her closer, too thin, too careful, too trained. She wasn't just poor, she was conditioned, like someone who had spent years doing what she was told, or else. "You hungry?" he asked. She nodded once, sharply, but didn't speak. He walked to the shelf, grabbed a can of stew, and heated it up. When he handed it to her, she took it in both hands, like it was treasure. She didn't eat fast, didn't gulps. She ate with quiet respect, bite by small bite, like she was afraid it might disappear. They sat in silence for a long time, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the wind howled again, but inside, it was warmer. Safer, maybe. As she finished her food, she looked up at him and whispered, "Thank you, Master." Marcus blinked, stunned. "Don't call me that," he said sharply. She lowered her eyes. "Sorry," she whispered. "That's what they told me to say." He didn't ask who they were, not yet. Instead, he said, "You can sleep by the fire tonight. Just tonight." She nodded quickly. curled up like a cat near the warmth. Towel wrapped around her like a blanket. Marcus watched her as her eyes slowly closed. Her breathing slowed, and just before she drifted off, she whispered something soft. Almost too quiet to hear. "Please don't sell me." His heart stopped for a moment. He didn't respond. Didn't ask, didn't move. He just stared at the flames as they danced in her wide alien eyes, and for the first time in years, he knew his quiet life was over. The fire was dying when Marcus opened his eyes again. Morning light spilled through the cracks in the wall, pale and cold. He had fallen asleep in the chair. Something he never did, but last night was not normal. There was now an alien girl, sleeping on the floor near the fire, curled like a frightened animal. She hadn't moved at all. Not even once. Marcus stood up slowly, his back cracking with age. He looked at the girl, again still asleep, still clutching the towel like a shield. He could have sent her away right now. Could have told her to leave before anyone found out. But instead, he went to the kitchen and boiled water. He didn't even know why. The smell of hot broth must have woken her. Her eyes blinked open, wide and alert. For a second, she looked like she was ready to run, but then she saw him, and she sat up, head low, hands folded in her lap. Waiting, Marcus brought her a bowl and set it on the floor in front of her. "Eat," he said. She nodded, picked it up with both hands, and began sipping quietly. Carefully, again, no sound, no slurping, no mess. She had been trained to be invisible. After a moment, Marcus sat down across from her. Arms crossed. "I got 3 rules," he said, his voice steady, no lies. He began. She nodded. "No." Stealing, she nodded again. "And no noise unless you need something. Speak plain, but no whining, no screaming." The girl stared at him, then whispered, "Yes." He raised an eyebrow. "You understand what I'm saying?" "Yes," she said again. "I will follow." "Good," he said. But his tone wasn't kind, just firm. He didn't want kindness right now. He wanted control. Because whatever she was, wherever she came from, it had brought trouble with it. By midday, she had cleaned the floors, washed the cups, arranged the tools in the shed without being told. She moved like she had memorized every step, every corner. Marcus watched her from the side window. Arms crossed again. It was strange he hadn't told her what to do, but she just knew. Or maybe she had done this before, many times, for someone else. That evening, he found something strange. A small torn cloth tucked under his toolbox, a patch with a symbol burned into it. 3 silver lines crossed by a red X he didn't recognize it, but something about it made his stomach twist. He looked out the window at the girl who was sweeping the porch in silence, barefoot in the cold. She hadn't noticed that he found it. Later that night, as he prepared to sleep, she asked, in a small voice, "Where do I sleep now?" He hesitated, then pointed to the corner. "There, by the heater." She nodded and moved quickly, grateful for even that, as he turned off the lights. He heard her whisper Agano, most like she was praying. "I followed the rules," she said softly. "I was good." Marcus didn't answer, didn't know how. But that night, he couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling. And just as the fire crackled low, he heard her voice again. This time, she was talking in her sleep. "No, no more fire. Don't lock me again. I can be quiet, I swear." Words were choked, her breathing fast, her hands clutching the towel like a lifeline. She whimpered, flinched, then whispered a single word that froze Marcus in place. "Run." He sat up, heart beating harder, not because of what she said, but how she said it. That word. It wasn't just fear, it was a warning. And suddenly, Marcus realized she wasn't just hiding from someone. She was warning him about what might still be coming. The third morning came with silence, just like the others. But something felt different today. The wind had stopped, and even the birds that usually chirped from the metal beams were quiet. Marcus didn't like that. Too much quiet usually meant something was coming. Inside the house, the girl moved like a shadow. Her name was still a mystery. And she never asked questions, never sat unless told. She had cleaned everything again before sunrise, the tools, the floors, even the inside of the vents. It was almost disturbing, the way she worked without rest. Like she was trying to erase herself with chores. Marcus handed her a plate, freshly washed, and said, "Put it on the shelf." She took it with both hands, nodded, and turned, but her bare foot caught on the chair leg. Just slightly, the plate slipped. CRA's shit shattered across the floor. Sharp pieces spinning across the room. For a split second, there was only the sound of breaking ceramic. Then nothing. No apology, no panic. Just complete stillness. Marcus turned toward her, expecting her to say sorry, maybe to clean it up quickly, but instead, she dropped to her knees, covered her head with her arms, and began whispering something over and over. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Her body trembled like it had been shocked, not just scared, but trained to react this way. She was curled up tight, expecting pain, punishment. Something worse. Marcus froze in place, unsure of what to do. He slowly walked over. Careful not to startle her, she didn't move, didn't lift her head. He kneeled down beside her and placed his hand gently on her arm. She flinched so hard it made him pull back. But she didn't run. Instead, she looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. Eyes full of something worse than fear, expectation. Like she knew what was coming. Marcus looked at her arms, and that's when he saw them. Scars, thin and pale, running along her wrists and forearms like faded lightning. Some old, some newer. Not from accidents, not from work. These were the kind of marks made by someone who wanted her to remember pain. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer. Only looked away and began picking up the shards with her bare hands. Blood started to drip from a small cut. "Stop," Marcus said firmly. "You'll hurt yourself." "I can clean," she whispered. "I must clean." He grabbed a cloth and gently took the sharp pieces from her hands. She didn't fight him, but she didn't help either. Just stared, confused, like she didn't understand kindness. Marcus wrapped her hand and handed her a bandage. She took it slowly. Still waiting for the punishment that never came. "You're not a slave here," Marcus said finally. Voice low, she looked at him with wide eyes, not knowing how to respond. "I don't hit people for accidents," he added. "I fix things. I don't break them." She stared at him for a long time, eyes blinking fast. Then, for the first time since arriving, she spoke a sentence without whispering. "No one ever said that before?" Those words hung heavy in the air. Marcus didn't answer, couldn't. Instead, he picked up the last broken piece of the plate and placed it in a box with care. She watched, confused. "Why keep it?" she asked. He shrugged. "Even broken things still have value." She looked at the shard, then at her own bandaged hand, and for the first time, her lips curved just slightly into the tiniest, saddest smile he'd ever seen. But that night, Marcus woke to a sound he hadn't heard in years, a distant humming outside, low and mechanical. He stepped outside with a flashlight, but the sky was empty, still. His gut told him something was near. When he returned inside, she was sitting by the fire again, eyes wide open. He asked, "Did you hear that?" She nodded slowly, and then she whispered, "They're looking again." Marcus was fixing a broken pipe near the water tank when he saw the dust cloud first. It rose from the hilltop like smoke, too straight to be wind, too controlled to be natural. His hands froze, wrench in mid-turn. As the shape of a patrol craft appeared on the ridge, small, sleek, hay, and graphicile colors of the Outer Ring enforcers. Trouble had arrived. He looked back toward the house. She was inside, humming quietly while cleaning the storage shelves. She didn't know yet, and maybe that was good. The craft landed with a hiss of steam, and the ramp lowered slowly. Boots touched down heavy, loud, not friendly. A man stepped out, tall, wearing black armor and a red glass visor across his eyes. He carried a badge on his chest and a scanner in his hand. His face was unreadable, but his presence felt like cold metal. "You the owner of this place?" The soldier asked, his voice sharp and professional. Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, this land's mine." "We're doing a sweep," the man said. Routine check. But Marcus had lived long enough to know nothing about this was routine. "What kind of sweep?" He asked carefully. "Escaped property," the man answered, pulling out a hologram. It showed a blurry image of a small alien girl with big violet eyes and tangled hair. Marcus didn't flinch, but inside, something turned to stone. "Looks like a child," he said, pretending not to care. "She's not." The officer said quickly, "Modified servant breed. Enhanced to look younger for obedience." The way he said it made Marcus's stomach twist. "She's dangerous," the man added. "Might act scared." Might act sweet, but she was programmed to run. Marcus crossed his arms. "Haven't seen anyone." The soldier scanned the area anyway, walking slowly around the yard. Every step he took closer to the house made Marcus's fingers twitch. The girl was inside, probably crouched behind a crate, hands over her ears, just like when the plate broke. If she made one sound, it was over. The scanner beeped once, then stopped. The man looked at Marcus, visor reflecting his face. "If you see anything," the soldier said, "report immediately." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "They usually don't last long in the wild. Some get taken by others. Some get torn apart." Marcus kept his face blank. "I'll let you know." The soldier nodded, tapped his badge, and walked back up the ramp. The engines whined. Then the craft lifted into the gray sky, vanishing into the clouds. Only dust and silence remained. Marcus exhaled slowly, then walked inside. She wasn't in the corner, not by the fire, not in. The backroom panic started to risen till he checked the metal crate beneath the workbench. The lid lifted slightly, and her eyes peeked out, wide and glassy. "They're still looking," she whispered. He nodded, "But they didn't find you." She crawled out slowly, her arms shaking. "I didn't make a sound," she said quietly. "I followed your rule." Marcus didn't know what to say. So he sat down and handed her a blanket. She wrapped it around herself and sat near the wall, watching the door like it might explode. "Who were they?" She finally asked. "Enforcers." Marcus said. "They work for the colonies, do cleanups, punishments, and collection." She hugged her knees tighter. "They took my sister," she said, voice cracking. "Last time I saw her. They put her in a cold box, and she screamed." Marcus looked away, his jaw tight. He wanted to say something comforting, but words felt useless. So instead, he stood, walked over, and said, "You're not going anywhere?" Her eyes widened. "Even if they come back?" "Yes," he said firmly. Even then, outside, the wind picked up again, but inside, the silence was no longer just fear, it was something else. A small moment of trust, surrounded by danger, and far above, in the clouds. The patrol ship turned, silently marking coordinates and preparing to return. Days passed after the patrol ship left, but the fear inside the little house didn't leave. It stayed quiet, cold, and heavy, like something hiding in the shadows. Marcus kept the doors locked, the lights low, and the fire burning, and the girl. She never asked to go outside again. She followed the rules better than anyone he had ever met. No lies, no stealing, no noise. But something was wrong with that. She acted more like a machine than a person, always waiting for a command, always. Asking permission to speak, Marcus had seen robots with more freedom one evening as the sun bled across the sky. Marcus sat sharpening his old knife near the fire. The girl was folding clothes with perfect corners, another task she had taught herself. He stared at her hands for a moment, small, pale, careful. Then he asked something simple. "What's your real name?" She froze, hands still gripping a shirt halfway folded. Her eyes lifted slowly, uncertain. "I don't have one anymore," she said softly. "I didn't ask what they told you," Marcus said. "I asked what your name is." She looked down. Again, her voice even lower. "It's not safe to say it." Marcus leaned forward. "You're safe here." She shook her head. "That's what the last one said too." His jaw tightened. "The last what?" She didn't answer, but her hands began to shake. Then she whispered something in a voice so faint it almost vanished into the fire. "Vela." He blinked. "What?" "My name is Vela," she said again, a little louder this time. "But if they hear it, they'll find me faster." Marcus frowned. "You think they're tracking your name?" "They track everything," she said. Eyes wide, they listen through dust, walls, sound waves. He wanted to laugh, to say that's not how tech works. But when he looked at her face, he couldn't, because she believed it with every broken piece of her soul. "All right," he said gently. "Then I'll only say it once." And he did. "Vela." It sounded soft and strange in the room, like a forbidden word set free, and her lips trembled hearing it again. Hush. She looked like someone being allowed to breathe for the first time. That name belonged to someone who dreamed once. She whispered she wanted to see the stars, to fly, to dance. Marcus didn't interrupt. Just listened. She liked music. But they erased all that. "Not erased," Marcus said. "Buried maybe, but not gone." Vela looked up at him with wet eyes, and for the first time since arriving, she asked something of her own. "Do humans get to choose their names?" "Sometimes," Marcus replied. "Sometimes we even earn them." She touched her chest gently, like the name still felt heavy there. "Vela," she repeated. This time for herself, it was a fragile moment, quiet. Pure, dangerous, but it was hers again, later that night. Marcus brought out a small music chip from a drawer he hadn't opened in years. He plugged it into the player, and soft sounds filled the room, slow notes from an old earth piano. Vela's eyes widened, her breath caught. She had never heard music like that before, not digital. Not cold, but full of warmth. She sat on the floor and hugged her knees, just listening. No chores, no sweeping, no rules, just sound. "Is this allowed?" she asked quietly. Marcus smiled for the first time in days. "Tonight," he said, "everything's allowed." But outside the cabin, under the thick clouds, a drone hovered silently, invisible to the eye. It blinked once, then turned toward the house, its scanners warming up. Vela had spoken her name again, and somewhere out there, someone had heard it. The sky was darker than usual. Clouds pressed low over the outpost, heavy with silence and threat. Marcus looked up as thunder rolled in the distance, slow and deep. The air smelled of metal and wet dust. A storm was coming inside. Vela was folding the same blanket for the third time. Her hands were calm, but her eyes kept flicking to the door. Something inside her had shifted since she'd said her name out loud. She moved slower, softer, as if finally claiming her own body back. Marcus watched her, pretending to drink his coffee. But he wasn't focused on the cup. He was watching the small, blinking red light above the cabin window. It hadn't been there yesterday. They were listening now. Someone had heard her name, and they were coming. That night, the storm finally hit. Rain pounded against the roof like fists. The wind howled through the vents, and lightning cracked the sky open in violent flashes. The power flickered once, then cut completely. The room went dark except for the dying fire. Vela gasped and hugged herself. Pressing into the corner, Marcus moved fast. Grabbing his emergency lantern, he turned it on and found her curled up eyes wide with panic. "It's just the storm," he said, but she was shaking too hard to hear him. "No power." "Oh, come now," she whispered. "Storms make it easier. Number signals, no escape." He knelt beside her, putting a steady hand on her shoulder. "They're not here yet," he said firmly, "and even if they come, we don't run this time." She looked up at him like he'd said something insane. "Not run," she repeated, her voice breaking. "You don't understand. They erase people like me. They unmake us, not just bodies but names, memories, feelings." "I won't let them take you," Marcus said. "Not while I'm alive, for a long time." She didn't speak. Only the wind answered him, screaming against the walls. But then she stood up slowly, trembling, and did something she hadn't done since she arrived. She walked toward the window. Lightning flashed and Marcus saw her face clearly in the white light. Not just scared anymore, but angry. "Then teach me," she said, her voice still small but sharper now. "Teach me how to survive without running." Marcus blinked, surprised. "You want to learn now?" Vela nodded. "I don't want to hide forever." He stared at her for a moment, this fragile alien girl who had come to him like a shadow in the night. Now standing in front of the window with her chin high and her voice steady, he stood too. Grabbed his old gear from the back room, an old shock baton, a thermal cloak, a data scrambler. He handed them to her, one by one. "We'll start with how to disappear without hiding," he said, "and how to stay warm without needing light." She took the cloak and wrapped it around herself like armor. "Thank you," she said, "not for shelter, but for giving me back the choice." Before the night ended, he also taught her how to press the emergency seal on the bunker floor, how to recognize different types of patrol ships by sound, and how to use silence as a weapon, not as a chain. But what neither of them knew was that a second drone had arrived. And this one was not just listening. It was marking coordinates and sending them to something much worse. The next morning was too quiet. No birds, no wind, no dripping from the storm. Just stillness, the kind that makes your skin itch. Marcus stepped outside with a rifle slung over his shoulder. Boots sinking into the wet dirt. The sky was gray, like it had been burned by lightning behind him. Vela stood in the doorway, wrapped in the thermal cloak. Her eyes scanned the horizon like she was no longer a runaway, but a scout. Everything about her had changed. She didn't hide behind walls anymore. She stood in front of them. Marcus felt it in his bones. Something was coming, and it came fast. By noon, a sound filled the sky like thunder without clouds, a sleek black ship dropped from orbit without warning. No lights, no markings, just silent speed and deadly purpose. It didn't hover this time. It landed hard. Its doors opened. Two armored figures stepped out, tall and inhuman in their movements. They weren't regular patrol officers. These were retrieval units. No voices, no questions, just command. Marcus stepped in front of the house, rifle raised. One of the units scanned him, then raised its weapon. "You are harboring stolen genetic property." The voice said, synthetic and cold. "Stand down or be terminated." Marcus didn't move. Vela stood behind him, but she didn't run. She took one step forward, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "This is my choice now." Before Marcus could stop her, she stepped into view, arms raised not in surrender, but in defiance. "My name is Vela," she shouted, voice clear through the dead air, "and I am not property." The retrieval unit paused. Its visor flashed red, then white, as if confused by her direct response. Marcus stepped beside her, aiming his rifle again. "She's under my protection," he said. "Under whose authority?" the unit asked. Marcus smirked. "Mine." The machine processed for a moment too long. Then it raised its weapon again, but before it could fire, a blast echoed from the woods nearby. A second rifle shot from behind the trees, slamming in two. The unit's shoulder plate, it stumbled, sparking, confused. Another figure appeared in the distance, a rebel scout, cloaked and aiming steady. More shadows moved behind her. Marcus whispered, "You've got friends." Vela blinked in shock. I didn't send a signal. You didn't have to." Marcus said, eyes on the trees. "You gave them hope the moment you said your name." The retrieval units turned to retreat, but this time no one let them go. The rebels came fast, silent, and precise. Within minutes, the threat was going buried in smoke and dust. Marcus lowered his weapon, still breathing hard. Vela stood in the same place, trembling, but not in fear. This time, it was something else. Relief, maybe. Freedom, definitely. That night, the fire burned higher than ever before. Vela sat beside Marcus, a new ID chip in her hand. It bore one name, Vela. No number, no brand, just a name. She looked at Marcus, her voice soft. "You opened your door once," she said. "Why?" He stared into the flames for a long moment before answering. "Because I remembered what it felt like." To be thrown away, Vela nodded, and after a long silence, whispered, "Then maybe it's time I opened mine too." She held out her hand, not as a servant, not as property, but as someone finally choosing to live. Marcus took it, and in that moment, under a sky no longer watched by drones, a new story began.